the world won't recognize your value until you own it first, and that it's okay to outgrow a chapter that no longer fulfills you.
Welcome to Marketing Your Way podcast, a show for women in marketing and creative fields who are ready to rethink what's next. I'm your host, Anastasia Mann, marketing strategist, agency owner, career mentor, and once upon a time, a corporate VP of marketing. This is your go-to space for career reinvention, whether that means launching your own business, pivoting into freelance, or finding a role that finally feels like a fit. Each week, I bring you honest stories, actionable strategies, and mindset tools to help you move forward with clarity and confidence. We'll also dive into what's actually working in marketing right now, from personal branding and client acquisition to AI tools and emerging trends shaping the future of our industry. And just in case you're wondering, yes, this podcast comes with a Ukrainian accent and a whole lot of straight talk, because it's time to build a career that works for you. Let's dive in. Today's guest is someone very special to me, not just because of her impressive resume, but because of where it all began. Chanel Milian was my very first marketing coordinator back when I just had been promoted to marketing manager at a real estate firm. She was sharp, driven, and full of ideas, and I always had a feeling she was going to do big things. Fast forward to today, Chanel is a luxury realtor in Miami and currently serves as the in-house sales executive for the Wall Residences in Coconut Grove. But before stepping into sales, she spent over a decade leading marketing strategy and consulting for some of the most iconic developments in Miami, from 1,000 Museum to 57 Ocean and beyond. In this episode, Chanel and I talk about how she grew her career one brave move at a time, from marketing coordinator to director of marketing at the top real estate firms in Miami, why she made the leap from marketing to sales, and what surprised her most about the switch, what's actually working right now in luxury real estate marketing, and how she's using AI to support her solo work as a realtor, and why building your personal brand is harder and more powerful than most people realize. This one is full of full-circle moments, heartfelt reflections, and real talk on ambition, burnout, branding, and becoming the version of yourself you've always known you could be. Let's get into it. Welcome, Chanel. I'm so happy to have you today with us. I know we've known each other for a very long time, but for someone meeting you for the very first time, how would you describe who Chanel Milian is in about 30 seconds?
First and foremost, thank you for having me and for creating such an intentional platform. You've been interviewing people who come on and share their stories, which, after all, is the essence of marketing. So I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. And it's actually my first podcast. But if someone were meeting me for the first time, I'd say I'm a born and raised Miamian. I'm a realtor who is also in-house as a sales executive at the Wall Coconut Grove Residences. And the long story that comes into play is my career was built on leading and consulting for some of the world's most prominent developers, for top producers, for very prominent brands, and all over the world. So at my core, I guess I would say I'm a people person. I'm incredibly passionate, limitless, and ever evolving.
Oh, I love that, Chanel. And yes, absolutely. I can definitely speak to ever evolving Chanel, because every year I meet you for coffee, it's a new story. And I love that, because we are growing and we are always changing. I love that about you.
Absolutely.
A little backstory how we met. When I just got promoted as a marketing manager at Cervera, you joined the team as a marketing coordinator, and that was one of the best marketing coordinators I've ever had. So I'm going to speak to that.
Thank you.
Yes. So very dear to my heart, and I know many things has changed since then, and many years has passed, and you've built this amazing career first in marketing, and now you moved to sales. And I just wanted to kind of bring our listeners back a little bit. And do you remember your very first few years of your marketing career? And what do you learn in those early years that still shapes you today?
It's so special that we're even having this conversation because I would like to say my story does officially begin with you. With that, I was a big dreamer, I would say, growing up. And by the time college rolled around, I went to school for marketing. And I didn't really know what that looked like, but I knew I was very fascinated by marketing and something was going to come about. From a personal level, I was incredibly infatuated with Million Dollar Listing New York. And while I was in college, I had a job in which I was actually doing leasing for one of the student housing communities. I did so well in that position that it actually inspired me to go get my real estate license. So fast forward, by the end of my senior year, I was working for a top producing real estate team in the area. And upon graduating, I went to go hang my license with a brokerage in which they were very excited to receive me and onboard me to that point. But I got a call probably within 6 hours of me filling out my application from the marketing team asking me if I wanted to be a part of the marketing department given my degree, and I should really consider it as a part-time job until I received my first commission. And quickly, my real estate career just kind of spiraled after that, and I never looked back. And that is where I met Anastasia Mann. She was my manager, which was the coolest experience. And, you know, I did learn so much, especially in such a short amount of time. I made friends, obviously, in this career that I will have forever, which is why we're here today. And I would say that I learned the biggest lesson, which was at the essence of every brand, and in this case, buildings and listings, there was a story to tell. Every single one of those properties had its own voice, had its own story, had its own life. And it was our job to bring that to the forefront. And I mean, how could I forget any of those moments? Because my whole view of the world really changed after that. Every city was built with stories within stories. And it was just like an incredibly special start to my career.
I love it. Yes. And I think that this is one of the reasons why I started a podcast, because we've been telling stories of buildings and people behind the brands. And I realized that I want to tell the story of people who are building those brands. So this was one of the reasons why the podcast has started.
I always thought about the day that I'd have the opportunity to tell my story. And it's just so special that it's here with you and you've cut out this framework to be able to do it. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Chanel, I love hearing your perspective on how you got recruited into the marketing department.
Yeah, they didn't really let me get far.
I had a similar story where Anuka, who we know and love so much, she was a family friend. And when I was moving to Miami from New York, Anuka was my real estate agent who showed the apartment. Oh. And that's how I got recruited into the marketing department.
I forgot about that story. That was such a good story. They did the same for you.
Exactly. Yep. And the rest is the history. So I'm very grateful for God, for universe to meet such amazing women in my life and people in general.
Absolutely.
So since then, you worked across some of the biggest names in real estate marketing. What helped you keep growing and moving forward in your career?
That's a really great question. And my fever was a little bit different than what many employers expected. Essentially, I was really a sponge. So I'd say first it was me with my dreams and aspirations. And I always wanted this really big career. I just didn't know what it looked like. And I would say that I worked for a lot of different people in the industry in a short amount of time. You know, to your point, I really did just kind of what I would say quantum leap into the business. And I had to do it in a very thoughtful way, yet it wasn't maybe the most ideal. So I really had roles, to your point, almost every 12 to 18 months that shifted and put me in a different seat. So, you know, I started as a marketing coordinator for a brokerage, in which I then ended up at a different brokerage just doing the general real estate side as a manager. From there, I actually went to a brokerage to just focus single-handedly on a new development project. So that really put me at the forefront of what the developers side of the business was. And from there, I was really able to handle many different projects at a time. I do think that meeting so many different personalities and people and dynamics really shaped me as a professional during that short amount of time. And I was able to understand the strengths, the weaknesses, the strategies of each and really bring them together. But I would say what really helped me move forward, aside from myself, were the people who gave me the opportunity to do so. And although there weren't too many, because I was moving very quickly at a pace that some people just couldn't wrap their heads around, I can think of three women in particular that were a huge part of my story, and it's something that I constantly repeat when I get asked this question. So, I mean, you were first, and you really taught me the ins and outs of marketing, especially like as a service to agents, and how to do it in a very pleasant and loving way. Like, you brought this very amazing relationship business into my life that I didn't even really understand existed. And you set the tone really for the rest of my career because you were the first. Following that, I did have a manager who was probably the most instrumental in my new development career. She really taught me the importance of building your relationships with your clients and with your team. And it really taught me how to have fun while doing it. And we really aligned on this like aspirational side of it, and it's what pushed me forward. And then I would say the third person is one of the most recent leaders I've had. She taught me how to turn storytelling into sales. So it was more about producing over perfection, which was something that was incredibly difficult to overcome with marketing. You want everything to be absolutely perfect, beautiful, no mistakes. She really just taught me it's better to get it done than it to be perfect. And that's a conversation you and I have certainly had. And to always play the long game. So whether it was for your clients or for yourself, she taught me how to play the long game for myself. And she was really the one that closed the loop as far as, wow, I have had these really amazing people in my career that I wouldn't be here without them. So that's what I would say, the people who paid it forward.
I'm truly honored. Sometimes you need a reminder that what you do matters, building a team matters, and you have big effect, spiral effect sometimes on people's lives. And that's why we have to lead with kindness and lead with just knowing that everyone is fighting their own battle on the other side, and we just do not know what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The storytelling and the perfection really hits hard for me because I think this year was the first year in my business where I said that I'm going to do things imperfect, because if I am striving for that perfection, nothing gets done. This is 25 anthem of the year mantra, to do a lot of imperfect actions and fix it later, because that's what's moving this business forward. And with marketing background, it is really hard to do. And I think that a lot of us can relate.
Yeah, we're taught to be perfect. We're taught to pay attention to every single detail, and it kind of slows the roll more or less. And it's this construct we have to overcome that, you know, at a certain point, it's better to put it out there than not at all. And that was something we talked about immediately before pressing play on this. So it is the nature of the beast. And I think the roots that we've developed going into the market, or going into our next step, I should say, in our career, definitely are strong. There is no doubt that our roots and our foundation are there, and we've perfected it. And now it's kind of like the opportunity to be unleashed into producing and knowing that we can always do better, and we just have to move forward and just do it.
Exactly. So you made this bold pivot from marketing director into the real estate world, into the sales world. So what gave you the clarity or courage to make that move?
Well, that was a long time coming. I had taken myself, and if you know me, you know that my career has been just overly important to me, especially throughout my 20s. All I did was work. And with every new position and role that I had entered to, I showed up, and I showed up every day. People really did recognize that. My peers, my colleagues, I always like to say, you never know who's watching. And I took myself so seriously, and it wasn't even my own business. So with that, I always had incredibly close friends and family and colleagues that were always encouraging me to go on my own and start my own agency. With my full marketing career that was happening on the corporate side, I was always being approached by startups and businesses to run their own marketing. So I here and there had all of these freelance opportunities, and I really didn't know what it meant. And at one point, I did choose my 9-to-5 real estate career as what I was going to completely indulge in. But I was always reminded or asked or told, you should really consider having your own agency. And I knew I was able to do it. It just never felt right. And it wasn't until my latest consulting career, where I was working for David Martin of Terra Group, that I recognized, okay, you were always searching in all of these places for what was next or what your own brand meant. And the common denominator here actually isn't marketing, it's actually real estate. And whatever facet of a business that I got into, I was always going to have the knowledge, the power, the experience of my marketing career to have an extremely strong brand and incredible marketing, but it was always going to be real estate in one way or another. So with that, I felt that all my unique experiences had basically set up this playbook that when COVID hit, I was teaching quite a few different agents the playbook of new development. And when COVID came along here in South Florida, there were an incredible amount of people who got their real estate license. And many of them knew what they were doing, and many of them, did not, which was fine. But I realized that I was no longer the 20-year-old girl that Anastasia Mann met. I was now sitting across the table from many peers and agents that had become my friends. And I was like, wait, I can actually put my playbook to play if I really wanted to. And that's where I decided to take the leap, because I was confident enough to do so. And going back to our perfectionism, I was always waiting for this perfect moment. Like, I had to be the most perfect professional in order to allow myself to take the promotion or have the next step or go on my own. And to our point, I was already there. I just had to give myself the floor, as I like to say.
This makes me emotional a little bit, because so many times we see ourselves, like I still see myself as if I just graduated college, right? And we've built over the years marketing careers, sales careers, with seeing ourselves still from the perspective of like when you're just starting out is such a amazing opportunity to see how far you've come. I was reading this book, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. So what it says is that A lot of entrepreneurs, especially, we strive for better, which is great. And we compare ourselves to that ideal, to your goal. And it says that we will never be happy with ourselves as a human, as a business owner, unless we start comparing ourselves to the beginning instead of comparing ourselves to our goals, because the goals will change. Like today, you want to close $100 million real estate deal, but tomorrow when you do that, it will change to 250 because 100 million is no longer enough. So your goals always change, and comparing ourselves to that, we will always feel unsatisfied with where we are right now.
Absolutely. And I think, on that note, I've spent quite a lot of time this year, I would say the last 6 months in particular, after having made this leap almost a year ago now, reflecting on that and writing down almost everything that I am proud of, and the relationships I have built and the things that have driven me to actually be able to look back and say, wait, this is like incredible. These are the patterns, the common denominators. And I think the level of reflection, to your point, is what allows us to see the gain and how those gaps maybe aren't as prominent as you feel they are. It's just about tying it together with a bow and making it a beautiful story like we're telling today.
Exactly. So Chanel, now that you made that leap and now that you're playing by your playbook, what has been the biggest surprise? Instead of consulting and teaching agents how to do it, to be in those shoes and to actually have to act on your advice.
For the years I was working on the marketing side where I was creating this story, this brand, this excitement. Now as a salesperson, I'm selling that story. And the transition overall was quite seamless. I think the only person who was pretty surprised was myself, because I had already perfected what I was doing. I just needed to do it. So I think overall, the surprise was the seamlessness. And it's such a reminder how integral marketing is for sales. No matter the business you're in, you need to provide a feeling, a sense of essence, a story with any brand or product in order to be able to sell it to the best of your abilities. At a certain point in my career, the marketing was quickly intertwining with sales, and it ends up being this fine line as far as maybe numbers that create the difference. But even then, so with the power of data and AI, the biggest surprise here was the shift wasn't all that big. It was just a matter, instead of producing the story, I was telling it and selling it.
You nailed your answer here. One of my recent episodes that I just talked about things that I was seeing and I was thinking. When you get to a certain level of your marketing career, either it's the VP of marketing or chief marketing officer, whatever the level is, when you have a team and team is doing a lot of work and you're overseeing it, your job becomes defending the value of marketing versus having fun with what you used to do, right? Because it is a sexy field. Like everyone loves being in marketing, and it helps you be creative and just challenge you in a different way. And I think with AI, that's another level also. Like you are that idea generator. AI can help you execute with giving you steps, etc., but you still have to execute, at least at this point of where AI stands and how we use it. And when I was making a transition originally from corporate marketing career to entrepreneurship and running the agency, was that idea that I did not want to have my boss's job at that point, because it was so much of just proving the ROIs and making sure that we need all the team members, that we don't have to let go of someone, that we have to hire more, or, all these things that are not the most exciting part of having that job. Running an agency now, like there's a lot of things that you do besides doing the marketing, even though you are creating the business for yourself. I think that that's the biggest thing. Like you want to make sure that the business you are creating, you're just not recreating the culture that maybe you decided to leave. And I think at the beginning, that's kind of a pattern for everybody to recreate that culture because that's what you know. And then you have to relearn what it is and what success means to you. And maybe it's not reaching X amount of revenue in your business, but it's more about X amount of time that you have to spend on yourself, your family, taking that break
Right.
in the middle of the day and not working 7 to 7. A quick break to let you know, if you are craving real conversations about what's actually working in marketing and what's not, come join us inside the Marketing Your Way community. It's a free space for women in marketing and creative roles who want to grow, connect, and explore what's next in their careers. Inside the group, we share industry news, unpack trends, explore how different roles are using AI to simplify and streamline their work, and we bounce ideas around from campaign strategies to career shifts. Whether you are freelancing, leading a team, or quietly wondering what else might be out there, you'll find women here who get it. Go to marketingyourwaypodcast.com/community or tap the link in the show notes to join us. I can't wait to see you inside. Okay, so Chanel, you've had a front row seat for some of the biggest luxury projects in Miami. What are you seeing actually working right now in the world of luxury real estate?
That's a great question. And I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag. First and foremost, I think the old school strategies and practices, which Cervera really had an amazing understanding of and teaching basis for, still work today. There's a lot of noise in the marketing world today. There's a lot of sexiness, to your point. There's so many different avenues. And to think when I started my career, I think maybe Instagram was taking off, but it wasn't like brands had their own handles. It was strictly just people. So aside from social media, I think that the best practices of relationship building, of email campaigns, of direct mailers, of those points of contact still all remain equally as important. But I think the level of detail that goes into the industry right now is like no other. So to your point, there's all of these different avenues. Social media allows you to take such deeper dives. And I think it's become this platform in which you can really bypass a website if you choose. You end up using Instagram to look something up before the internet. And I mean, that's been a given for so long, but it's also become even bigger of an avenue overall. Look at the power of TikTok. I use TikTok like it's Google. It's crazy. And the access to information is so much faster. So as professionals, we have to be that much faster as well. I'm seeing the level of detail that goes into the luxury real estate world is unprecedented, whether it comes down to the level of finishes or the storytelling that goes into campaigns. It is so detailed as far as what our clients want to see and understand. Our clients today, like never before, are discerning, they're sophisticated, they are educated because of the constant data we're getting every day. So you have to be thinking 10 steps ahead as far as what that looks like and what those expectations come with. And second to that, being able to constantly shift. So as we launch a brand, just as we did in the early days, you have to listen to what your clients want and what they need and identify patterns. And sometimes that means a shift in your campaigns, a shift in your product, and really being flexible in order to do so. So like I said, whether it comes down to the finishes or an amenity or a floor plan, it's just really being able to evolve and adapt because of the marketing world and the data in front of us being so quick. And it's a really exciting time to be a part of. And I think it's a really big lesson to almost anyone in marketing or in an industry that has the forefront of that, because you have to adapt and you grow that much faster with it as well if you welcome it.
Yeah.
instead of pushing back as far as how things used to be or what they were. You kind of have to ride the wave with your client.
I love that. Yes, shifting and adapting, I think one of the biggest mantras this year as well, right? So I left the corporate career in 2021. So it's been almost 5 years now. And the idea of where my business was at that point or where I wanted it to be was so different from where it is now. The original idea for the podcast was to do real estate marketing podcast. And because I do this day to day with my clients every day, I know that it would help with lead generation and
Right.
all of the other things to bring more business for the agency. However, I felt that I needed to do something different for my creative outlet so I can experience stories from different worlds, the ones that I'm not exposed to per se every single day. And I'm glad that I did, because I'm having conversations with women like you that just inspire and showcase the power that we have. The marketing departments do such an amazing job, and it's such an essential part of any business. And if you are a business owner and if you are thinking like, what does the marketing do, please do not underestimate the amount of work that we do. It's just amazing to see how that evolved. And I think that a lot of business owners now understand the power of marketing and that we do drive sales, even though sometimes it's not directly correlated, right? Like when you build a brand and then someone comes from, I don't know, a billboard, or someone comes for
Right.
social media, but they don't tell you that, right? Because they do
Right.
not know how they found you per se, because it's like on the subconscious way of seeing us everywhere, whatever we do. So that being said, everything that we've been doing is still working, right? So the traditional forms of marketing are still working. So nothing really gets discouraged. And a side story, I did see your e-flyer today
Thank
of your
you.
listing from One Southern Museum. And
Yeah.
that was the very first building that you managed, right? For the development marketing?
Correct.
And I thought it was like, oh, that's a full circle moment. Here we go.
Oh,
Chanel has a listing, $5 million listing.
and it's something, I mean, it's so interesting how this world is very small.
Yes.
Miami overall is a huge city. Real estate is something that I think always anchors our city. New York, it's finance; California, it's entertainment. But here in Miami, it is real estate, and we're just at the beginning. So I think, just as we're having this conversation today, it's incredible how many full circle moments we can have in this industry, because at the end of the day, it's so small. And to your point, no one really knows what an army, a little marketing team can be. If I think about all of the roles I've had, I've been the one woman show, I've been on a small and mighty team, I've been on larger teams, but they really have the ability to produce so much and create. And I don't think that unless you're in the marketing world, you don't really recognize or even realize how small and talented these teams are, and how behind the door, there's only like 3 people sometimes, and they're responsible for the whole brand. So it is really full circle for people like ourselves who are able to take the next step and build our own brand, because we know how much work goes into it. We know how much one can do and how to make it work and get there. We just need to do it.
Yep, absolutely. And so that being said, how are you using AI right now in your real estate work? Are there any tools you're experimenting with?
So I'm quite simple at the moment. ChatGPT has been a really good friend of mine. I refer to ChatGPT as Chatty.
Yes.
And you have to know how to prompt it. It is not your solution finder unless you understand how to direct it and speak to it and prompt it to get what you're looking for. And for marketing professionals who are exceptional prompters, you get some exceptional answers. So with that, I have personally used it in my business, whether it's developing memos or briefs that I used to maybe do myself from
Mm-hmm.
beginning to end, I allow it to fill the gaps. And I think that is really powerful for being an independent contractor right now, for not necessarily having a full team and being used to being on a team and bouncing things off of people. It
Mm-hmm.
allows me to almost like double check the work I'm doing. Like, what am I missing? What am I not thinking of? And I have a very strong foundation to implement this strategy, but how can I make it that much better with thinking outside of myself and filling in those gaps that I'm not necessarily paying attention to? So I think it's been really helpful as far as using it for, like I said, whether it's a memo, whether it's creating a sales message, whether it's developing a strategy for farming. There's so many different ways that you can use it, but I use it particularly in the this is what I'm doing. What else can I do? And I think it's been really, I mean, it's such an amazing tool. And I really haven't even tapped almost anything else outside of that. With time, I will. We'll see what that looks like.
Especially in the marketing world, it really changed the way we do things.
Mhm.
I don't think it will ever replace a person behind, but you do need to learn how to use it. And I love how you use it. You know, we are filling the gaps. I start using it on a personal level as well. Like, besides just work, I'll be like, oh, so I have something on my skin. I'll take a picture, I'll send it to it. It's like, do I have to worry about this? And they're like, it's not medical advice. However, I think this is what it is, right? I use it a lot for traveling just to like give me ideas. And I was actually too listening to this training on SEO for 2025 and the changes, because we all see how we are no longer prompted to go to the first thing on Google or to the first, second, third website on Google, because it's answering the question on top with AI and giving us
Yes.
sources, right? So like whatever the question you have, it will give you the AI reply plus the sources on the side.
Right.
So the interesting aspect of it, the blogging is still very important. So for example, like if even if we are podcasting, like even if people are not reading that much, AI is getting the information from well reputable websites. Your ranking on Google still matters, and also having a good content on your website that answers questions. The only shift is it's no longer that much about the keywords, but it's more about having conversation and answering
Right.
questions. So I thought it was very, very neat. And the same thing with Instagram now. So the Instagram has the SEO searchability of their captions, which is huge. So people can find answers on your Instagram. As realtors or any other service provider, it's very important to answer questions within your captions. I have been a big ChatGPT fan for a long time now, but I've started exploring some tools. Even this tool that we are recording the podcast in, it does a lot of AI editing on the back end, which is amazing. So it makes your job easier than it used to be.
I haven't, as you know, I haven't used many of the tools, or I should say more so platforms, but to your point, you know, you remind me without even thinking about it, how many of our existing platforms have AI as a plugin to support the efficiency of what we're using it for. So whether it be a caption, whether it be a note taker, you know, there's so many things that are seamlessly already AI driven that people like myself haven't even really noticed when you're asking me that question, which
Yeah.
is really amazing with how efficient the work that we're doing today has become versus needing, you know, one person taking notes, the other person developing a caption. I mean, you can be an army within yourself now just with the power of these tools.
That's true. I had definitely a full circle moment thinking about when you were still with Cervera, how we were having these meetings and one person is taking notes, another person is doing this thing on the board, and then you have to take pictures and then you have to do a recap and how much time we spent doing that. And now it's all automatic. Like I use the AI assistant on Zoom meetings, so that I have a recap right away, even without recording the meeting. It is truly amazing how that this world changed in a matter of a few years. Let's talk about email marketing. If you're over clunky platforms and wasting hours designing emails, it's time for a change. Meet Flowdesk, the easiest, most beautiful email marketing tool out there. Stunning templates, simple automation, no limits on subscribers or emails. And the best part? You get 50% off your first year. That's just $19 a month. Grab your deal now at marketingyourwaypodcast.com/Flowdesk. It's marketingyourwaypodcast.com/FLODESK. So did you ever feel like you had to start over or re-explain your value during the transition from marketing to sales?
I think I had to explain my value and re-explain my value time and time again with every new position I took, which was quite easy for me to do. I felt like I was really confident in my worth. And I think it was part of the reason I jumped so much. I mean, I was very good at explaining what I did and the value I brought to the table. But it was much more difficult to constantly, to your point, when you're talking about ROIs and proving value with the marketing metrics, I found it much more difficult to grow as quickly with my own value within a certain business, right? So with that, going into sales, it was actually this huge weight off of my shoulder because most people, like I said, they weren't surprised. I was more surprised in myself. And I was the one who didn't see it. I had no idea how easy this transition it was going to be. And I knew the business. I knew how to provide true white glove service and support to my clients and ultra high net worth individuals on the back end every single day. And with every step, I perfected that. I perfected the negotiations. I perfected the strategy. I had perfected the marketing within all of these different big players. And I found that starting over actually, and I think you could probably attest to the same testament, felt like I was reborn and I could re-explain myself with my own voice. And the only person there that I was going to have to one up was myself. So I think it was an incredibly special experience because on the back end and in corporate, you're constantly proving your worth year after year. And it was a little exhausting, especially when it comes down to reviews and promotions and financials. But I now prove myself to myself every day. And it's incredibly liberating. And I've absolutely loved every second of it.
Oh, I'm so happy that you have this experience. When I started the agency, I found that it was hard to disattach and market your own agency or yourself, because when you start an agency, it's you and maybe one more team member, right? So you're like a man for yourself. So you are building your own brand. And I felt like I was hiding behind the name many times. And one of the reasons why, as you said, like when you were in your 20s at Cervera, fun fact, I remember getting glasses. I look much older, so people can take me more seriously, right?
Right.
Because at some point, like you were so young and you look so young. The agents are like in their 40s and their 50s, and you're in your 20s telling them what to do. And it just felt like you were building your confidence and actually speaking and learning how to deal with your clients. And in my case, it was the agent who was a client or a developer who was a client. And so when I started my agency, that was on the back of my had subconsciously that I wanted to have a big name, and I wasn't really putting myself out there that much. And you could say that I was hiding behind the brand name until this year. We're like, okay, I really have to start building my own brand because that's what I do for my clients. And it felt personal, right? Because
Right.
you are the one telling your own stories now. And sometimes it's vulnerable. Sometimes in order to build a brand, we have to expose all sides of who we are. And it's not easy. And you're proving the value to yourself. There's nobody else to prove the value to but you. And sometimes you don't see it right away. So having people in your life who are your cheerleaders per se, when we meet for coffee, I feel so inspired, right? Day to day could be daunting sometimes, and you just need like this little sunshine in your day to realize, oh, this is why I'm doing this. Like that's the reason why this is happening. And yeah.
And I'm very happy to be that for each other because I mean we've grown in this career together. I mean I was 21 when I started at Cervera. I don't how old were you at the time?
I was probably, that was what, 2014, 2015? 2015. Yeah. I was 25. I wasn't much 25. Older.
And I felt like you were at the moment, right? I really did. Yes. I was like, well, she's my manager, you know, and you were running the show. And I think it's full circle. And it very much so goes back to these small and mighty teams really don't get enough credit. And for me, you know, I really resonate with the difficulty that comes with starting your own brand. You're so used to telling other people's stories and you know what goes into that. But, you know, I jumped full throttle into a new development. I had a few listings. I've had to really take a step back to analyze what my brand is because I have so much to say and there's so many beautiful things about our personalities that have allowed us to have the careers that we have that you have to kind of paint that picture. So what does that look like? I mean, there's nothing harder than branding yourself. This is an incredible step that you've taken to do this podcast because it is huge and it is very vulnerable and it puts it puts a face to your brand in a whole different way. When I got the news that I had received several blessings to be on this new development, which was really the big step in my career, which changed and pivoted my direction with this new era, one of the things I knew I needed right off the bat was a social media manager. I had been given this incredible opportunity to be on an amazing project, and I specifically had come from a very burnt out place, which we have not talked about and could be a whole different podcast. But I knew I couldn't do it all. And with that, I knew I could be an amazing social media manager for myself, but now I was selling. And with that, I needed to pass over the reins to somebody else to help tell that story without me spending my whole day thinking about it. And that is where I really felt that, okay, if I'm going to re-explain myself, I can do so on my platforms and the rest will all fall into place. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you just need to produce and you just need to hit the ground running. The last few months, I have been working incredibly hard on my personal branding, which we also do come from the world of quiet luxury, from a very discerning clientele and demographic that we're constantly representing and working with, that there's so many facets of, well, what does this look like in order to align with that? And regardless of what it looks like us. So that's what I try to tell myself. It is us. Like, we do have a story to tell. We have a face that we need to put to the name, just as we would with any other brand. So it's the first step. And with that, the steps will come.
And Chanel, you're doing an amazing job. Amazing job with your social media. Amazing job with your branding. And I'm getting all of the e-flyers and I see your face all the time. And you're doing a lot of great things on video. That's the form that builds trust the most. Yeah. And it is not easy. And the fact that you recognize that you don't need to do that yourself is also huge.
Right.
Because sometimes it truly is easier to disconnect if someone helps you with that aspect. You just see a different perspective. And I think that it's beautiful. We can have a full on different conversation about getting help when you feel like you need to, regardless if it's in your business, if it's at your home, and what that allows you to do. And that allows you to work on your business instead of working constantly in your business. And I think as business owners, independent contractors, your job is to really sell and build relationships. You mentioned it at the beginning, but you are at the Well Coconut Grove, an amazing project, amazing location. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, Well Coconut Grove is situated in an incredibly special submarket and neighborhood. I would say Coconut Grove is probably the most historic and one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Miami, but it's incredibly understated. And the developer who is developing this in tandem with the Well brand, Tara, has really taken all of the steps in order to meet that with their buyers. And as we mentioned earlier, really dig into it. But the Well Coconut Grove overall has seen this incredible desirability from the local neighborhood, which is really nice. And Miami has grown quite quickly, especially the last 5 years, I would say. And the local neighborhood are those that already reside in Coconut Grove, those who had homes there for 30 years, those who are New Yorkers and Northeasterners. We're seeing a lot of Californians, but the majority of them already have a footprint here. And I think that this project really sets the tone of community and of design. You know, we are a very, as I've mentioned, quickly growing city in which there have been so many projects on the market for quite a long time now that it's hard to differentiate yourselves. And I think this project is very different. It's very warm. It's very rich regarding those interiors. It has a huge driver with the Well brand on wellness, which is a $1 trillion industry. And it's also set in an affluent neighborhood in which it's lacking premium product. So we're seeing basically anyone you would see on a Saturday afternoon walking the Grove, from young families, double income, no kids, people who've just gotten off their boat in shorts and flip-flops. But they all really recognize how special the market is. And we're now starting to see people whose brokers have brought them there that maybe didn't even know Coconut Grove existed. So I hope it remains a secret, but I hope it also, we sell out as soon as possible. So we're doing quite well. And I can't be any more thankful for having this project as my first project in which I am the salesperson, because when I was working, I was actually doing a lot of the pre-planning for this job.
Okay.
I had all of the feelings that we've spoken about, you know, all of this time during this episode, but I was like, this is the one. I have to sell this one. This is the one that I feel really passionate about. And it was probably the marker as far as you need to jump. And if you can have it, you need to go for it. So as I always say to many of my friends and my peers, you don't get what you don't ask for. And this was a perfect example of that.
I love how decisive you were, and also realizing that this is the one, and you asked for it and you got it. And it is a lesson on its own that we have to not be afraid to speak into existence and ask for what we want. What is something you wish more women in marketing roles knew about trying something new or switching roles, switching lanes, like switching companies, careers?
That's a great question. I've highlighted a little bit about the women in my career that have made it so special and so successful. There's a lot of men in the world and in my career story that have as well. I can't shy away from that. But I will say, as a woman, that the world won't always recognize your value until you own it first. And that it's okay to outgrow a chapter that no longer fulfills you. I've really talked about how this career of mine has seen many different leaps and jumps and steps. And I think at a younger age, of course, there were ways that I could have certainly handled my exits a little bit better. There were certainly scenarios in which that, of course, I would have loved to be anywhere 6 months longer, whatever it ended up being. But at the end of the day, the only person that's going to give yourself the opportunity is you. And
Yes.
it's going to upset some people and it's going to not be ideal for the most, but it doesn't really matter because it comes down to you. And I think I was incredibly ambitious and selfish to get to where I needed to be and wanted to be. And as I always say, as of late, my real estate career today would not have been what it is without every single stepping stone up until this. So nobody can give you an opportunity better than yourself. Even if you don't know what that means today, you just have to move forward in what feels good and what feels right. And no one knows you better than you.
Such a great point. So, what does success mean to you now?
So that definition has evolved. So I like the word now. I will say that I was incredibly ambitious my whole career financially. I was always in search of a higher compensation. And Miami is an incredibly expensive city. I was very independent my whole life. I completely supported myself from the point that I was in college. So with that, compensation had always pushed me in that direction, as well as evolving and growing. With that, I think success today feels a lot simpler, but more meaningful. It's waking up energized by the work that I do versus exhausted and anxious. And the people I get to do it with. I feel successful when I know I've had a real impact on my clients and when I've touched my clients in a certain way that maybe they didn't see me as. And whether that's helping them find a home that changes their life forever or guiding them through a smart investment in which they wouldn't have been able to do without me. I think, of course, there's freedom that comes with part of that, but it's incredibly rewarding to build my own success with what makes me and my brand incredibly special. The freedom to build a career on my own terms and to choose who I work with and have my own boundaries and to lead with the care and the service that I can give my clients versus the ego is really huge. And success means different things for different people, especially when becoming an entrepreneur. But I am working harder than I ever have. I'm busier than I have ever been, which was a huge surprise because I thought our 7s to 7s were enough. But with that, it is just so incredibly rewarding. And when I can fulfill something, when I can serve purpose in somebody's investment or direction or transaction, it just means that much more knowing that that was me and that was something I was confident undertaking. Overall, success is simpler, but I do think it's much more meaningful. And that's what I search for. I search for the meaning and for the feeling.
I love it, Chanel. And a lot of people, especially in Miami, start real estate business for a wrong reason. Meaning they want the flexibility that real estate business gives or having time and their weekends or whatever that is. And we all know that in order to make it in this business here, there is very little flexibility, a lot of hours that goes into that. Chanel, thank you so much for this beautiful, very meaningful conversation that we just had. If someone is looking for real estate in Coconut Grove or Miami in general, how can they find you? What are your social media handles? How they can connect with you? Tell us all of the places, please.
Absolutely. Always happy to help, whether it's a quick conversation, an exchange. And I'm always happy to be a source. The easiest route is following me on Instagram. So that's at Chanel Milian. And from there, you can find my very long email address, as well as information on what I'm working on, my latest deals, etc., including my phone number. So if you're ever in Miami, please, come visit me if you're not a local. If not, just feel free to reach out. I'm always open to a coffee, a conversation, a podcast, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chanel.
Thank you. Thank you so
It's
much for
been a
having me
pleasure.
and for doing this. This is so special and important to women all over in so many different industries.
And that's it for today's episode of the Marketing Your Way podcast. I hope you're walking away with fresh ideas, new insights, and the confidence to take your next step. If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to leave a review. It helps more women in marketing find the show and build a marketing career on their terms. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Until next time, keep building your marketing career your way.